On 106.5 FM, this is Radio Turcoid Drive with Wyn Thomas.
Hello! Here we go!
And thanks to your company, the After Five guest is next with Anthony Buchanan.
Wyn Thomas's Drive Time, now playing worldwide.
On 106.5 FM and online, it's the After Five guest with Wyn Thomas.
And I'm delighted to be joined this afternoon by Anthony Buchanan, ex-Wales prop, who played many times for Wales. Marvellous. Anthony, thanks for coming today.
Thanks very much on an awful day.
But on an awful day. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. The book is, of course, a wonderful book. You've got it in your hand. Have you give it back to me?
Yeah, yes, of course we will. Yeah.
Right. So the book is The Buck Props Show.
Yeah.
I love that. It's a great title. Yeah.
Yes.
The forward stance is by Gareth Jenkins concerning, and really he's talking about the treatment of the Premiership teams by the Welsh Rugby Union. What's your views on that?
Yeah, look, I was part of the Welsh Rugby Union, and Gareth is very much entitled to his views, which I 99.9% agree with him. So, you know, from my point of view, he felt that it was the wrong direction, and that he wanted to voice his opinion, and he did so, and I do support that view.
Okay. So you don't think there's enough money going towards the Premiership teams?
Well, it's unfortunately, we need to just identify what is the Premiership. But we have to remember, you know, the likes of Llanelli, Swansea, Bridgend, Carmarthen, Llanelli, and everybody plays in this is a development pathway through to the professional game. And I think to downsize it or downgrade it into academy to the community, I think is a big mistake. And I don't support the view. I didn't at the time, but you're in the majority.
Because it was created once the top rugby teams were created. They were supposed to be feeders into them. They were academies, weren't they, in a way, yeah?
Well, we flatly, and every team in the Premiership has also gone along and developed, or helped to develop. You've got to be careful, because we were very fortunate, the likes of Liam Williams, Owen Williams, Ben Morgan, Alan Shingler. We took about 4 or 5 that had missed, that were late developers, and had missed the academy structure. So when they came into Llanelli, all ended up playing for Wales, all ended up having man of the matches for their country. So I think there is a vehicle to take people forward from late developers and boys perhaps that haven't quite arrived where they should have at a young age. So it gives them a bit of time then to develop and push on.
Wasn't it Ben who played for England as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, Ben. Yeah, we tried to get him to change his mind.
Let's look at the career then. So, picked from Ystrad for Llanelli and moved from number 8 to prop, but never played it before. Was it a bit of an experience?
It's an understatement. I think I was catching the eye playing number 8, and people were sort of talking to me about playing a higher level, but everybody, it was actually Roy John of Neath that said the first words to me were, look, if you want to go further, you're going to have to think about going up front. And I said, you've got no chance in hell for me to go up there. I said, any trouble all starts there, you know. And but I soon realised that if I wanted the opportunity to play at a higher level, that I had to consider it.
And did mind no turning back?
Oh gosh. There were times when I thought I made a big mistake, but I did want to play at a higher level, and I thought to myself this was a vehicle to do so. And but I think it's more to that is you just got to be single-minded.
It wasn't the only move you'd made from the back to the front, because you were a goalkeeper at one time, weren't you? And then went to number 8 and then went to prop.
Well, I played football till I was 22, and I was meeting my wife, whose brother was captain of Scarlets at the time, and the big buzz about it then was the rugby clubs were the social hub of the village, and they were where everything happened. It was a Saturday night, and it was sort of, so I used to run back from playing football, run home and change, and then go down and meet my girlfriend then, perhaps if I could get a seat, or people had to keep me a seat. And I just felt that rugby offered so much in part of the spirit of the game, but you also had the off the field was quite tight, and it was a great community, just place to be,
But Ulster were a good cup team, weren't they?
Oh yes, yeah. They were at Section A side, and we used to play down here in Elias Hendy and on all these teams down here, West Wales. Pretty tough environment.
Yeah.
But also we had the Welsh Cup, which was quite unique, and we always gather around waiting for those draws and what groups we were in, and get quite excited about if there was one of what we used to call the first class teams then in our group, and we think, oh right, that's what we want, but we want them home.
I can remember my days when Bonamine were playing the Whites Swans in the Cup.
Mm-hmm.
That was a heck of a game, that was.
Well, I had a strange part of the story. It's in the book. It's in the book. It's we drew Llanelli in the Scarlets, so we drew 6-all. I was marking Derek Quinnell. I was number 8, and Derek was number 8 for Llanelli at the time, full of British Lions and internationals. And quite ironic, he was my coach then when I went to the World Cup with Wales. And then 2 years later, we drew Swansea, and I was marking Dick Moriarty, who ended up being my captain. I don't think at that time anybody thought anything about that, but it was quite unique, those 2 games.
But you were in the days when there was no pro rugby, those early Llanelli days, so you worked as well. You worked in a mine.
Oh yeah, that was another thing. It was a
hard,
shift of direction. That I was working in a factory first, and I was my wife then, or is now rather, but my wife's father was an overman in a colliery in Treorgan in the Crine at Dillis Valley, and always said to me, "There's 50 years work here. You'll retire there," and convinced me that it would be a good move for me to go into the mining industry, because it was a lot of sort of stability, what we thought at that time.
Yeah.
Didn't work out like that, but that's life.
But you do a morning shift and then you go and play for Llanelli in the afternoon.
Well, one of the major points was the engineer was a Llanelli supporter.
Right, okay.
And mind, it was true. This is true. He said he always used to tell me if I'd come in, we play Newport away or something, and I'd say, look, I'm working Saturday morning, and he said to me, come in, instead of coming in at 6, come in at 4. So I'd go in at 4 in the morning, and so he said, I don't want anybody to think that you've been favouritism, because there's quite a few Neath boys and everything playing in the same working in the same colliery.
But still, a hard shift underground, and then hard shift on the ground.
I don't. I think my job was, I was sort of repairing pumps and everything, and so I'd travel around. Wasn't on the coal face as such. I did spend some time on the coal face, but I was sort of more of a fit-in type of role where I'd be outside of that coal face. But it was still going in at that time in the morning and still going to play, and and sometimes I worked Sunday, and get home and get up the next morning and go to work battered and bruised. Yeah,
I bet. Yeah, you said you always wanted to play to a higher level. But you waited some time to get your first cup. That was against an old fort, Tonga,
yeah,
in the first World Cup, propping against some crazy guy I read in the book.
Oh, it's honestly, there's no exaggeration about this story. But fortunately enough, I was picked for Wales to go to Fiji, Tonga and Western Samoa in 1986 prior to the World Cup. So I'd come along and we went to Fiji, and that was quite physical and different. It was 90 degrees. I had a thick woolen jumper on and a Welsh jersey on rather, and temperatures were high, and they really tested you, and it was quite physical, and it was full on, and it reminded me of my West Wales days. You had to learn how to survive, and I used to think to myself, gosh, I've come to play for Wales. I expected to run out the Arms Park, everybody cheering, crowd singing, lovely game of rugby on all off. My baptism into that Welsh jersey was quite tough.
Yeah, and this Tongan guy was crazy, wasn't it?
Oh, he was. As soon as I saw him, in fact, I was walking up the steps to meet the King of Tonga, and Richard Moriarty was in front of me, and I said to Richard, I turned around and looked across, and he was opposite me, and he was just sort of eyes popping out of his head, and his arms, he was like Popeye, big arms, and And I said, take a look at this one. He said, this one looks as if he's ready for action.
And even the referee told you to be careful.
He told, and honestly, that's a fact. And so I had quite a few run-ins with him through that tour. And then we went in, obviously the World Cup. Then we drew Tonga. And it was my first cap, and I looked at the team sheet and he wasn't there, and I thought, well, great, it was a bit of a relief, this guy's not there. And anyway, we started giving him a pretty hard time up front, and I could hear the crowd then sort of roaring away, and I thought, it's him, I know it's him. And to my side I could see it through the corner of my eye, him warming up on the field like Popeye.
But you came off all right. You got on all right.
Yes. Yeah, the first thing you did. I think some people take rugby. Unfortunately, I think the islands at those times they were very much an escape for the villagers to all go out and get really tough with each other. so you had to learn how to survive, I think.
So you went from number 8 to prop, and I know that Jonathan Davis has said this, and also Eddie Butler said this, that the front row is a science of its own. Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. It's absolutely a thinking man's game. Like, don't let anybody fool you. It's all brutal banging, because you'd meet somebody smaller than you, taller than you, stronger than you, technically better than you, and you'd have to think your way around it all. And those were sort of, where do I push it in my head? Do I go to the right a little bit, to the left a little bit? And I learned how to survive and just keep myself. And then as time was getting on, I started to improve, and then all of a sudden I started giving other props a bit of a tough time, learning from the times that I had sort of...
There's a story in the book where you played for South Wales Police against the British Police, and they didn't know who you were, and you took on this prop who thought he was going to have a time with you, and it's the other way around.
Well, and again, honestly, these stories are all true, and it was sort of amazing, and afterwards he kept telling me, "Who are you then? I know you from..." And he'd actually been to a Nice Rugby Club with a guy that he'd been working with.
Look at his face. We said I'm anti Buchanan. Welsh Rugby Union prop. He must have thought, what the heck?
Well, I didn't know what standard. I didn't really know what standard I was up against. So you don't know until you actually engage on the first scrum.
You're on tour with New Zealand. You went on tour with Wales to New Zealand. Carried an injury, a neck injury, throughout that tour.
Yeah.
The New Zealand team rucked and studded players. And there was always a rumour in those days in the 80s that they had what was known as star studs. Did you ever see star studs?
I think everybody used to carry 2 sets of boots. The first set is for the referee to check. Once he leaves the room, you put the second set on, and which were probably more like a rugby league type stud, long, thin, and with more of a grip, I'd like to say, rather than to do damage to somebody. But in New Zealand, the rucking and that has always been fierce. If you're around that ball area, you know what's coming. And the whole idea is that if you've caught there once, you don't go back to second.
Yeah. That was the third team playoff, wasn't it?
That was the World Cup, and obviously there was the... And as I say in the book, somebody else's misfortune is yours, and I was fortunate enough to then go on and play against England, and we won that game, and then the semi-finals then was the All Blacks, and that was something else. And then 5 days later we had to fly across to Australia and what was good, we played in Brisbane, and we played against the All Blacks in Brisbane, in Australia, so we had all the Aussies shouting for the Welsh team, and then we jumped on a plane and flew across the Rotorua, and all the Kiwis then were shouting for the Welsh team against the Aussies. So either way, we had a bit of support either side of the...
Okay, so you come out of rugby, you become an athletic team manager. Bit of a difference from playing?
Well, I think one of the key aspects of that, I think Gareth mentioned it here and there, was that obviously as a player I knew all the... It's like the old poacher gamekeeper type role, and we were moving on, and there was obviously a change in direction for rugby. Was getting, there was rumours of European rugby starting, everything, So there was key element that they needed somebody that had been there, done it, and my first thoughts were coaching. I was going to coach, and I started coaching a bit, but then they had me back, and they said, "Look, would I consider this?" And I thought, well, it's a challenge. It's something different, and I spent 15 years at it, and I can't write about those stories in the book, sorry.
That's all right. Lots of stories in the book.
yeah. Those are the ones. As somebody used to tell me, what's on tour stays on tour,
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But lots of change in the game, which what sort of stands out to you? I mean, video refs now, is that something that you like?
I as you read on in the book, my first, having 15 years with the Scarlets, I was sort of fed up of jumping on planes and staying in hotels, and it sounds like a glamour life, and everybody says, oh yeah, great. But I also had a job, and I had to start making my mind up whether I was going to go full-time rugby or stay with my job. And contracts then were 3 years, and I thought, well, I had two young girls, and I wanted them to go on and do well, so I didn't feel rugby could offer me the security at the time, so I was doing 2 jobs for quite a long time, 14 hours a day, 15 hours a day, and you've got to make a decision. But I think the team manager's role was quite an interesting one, where I think my time played out for me, and I knew it was right for me to go, and Gareth had gone on to the Welsh team, Nigel and Gareth gone up there, and I started my own business with an opportunity, and I thought, it's time to give that some go, time, but it didn't last long until I got back into rugby.
Well, I say there's absolutely loads and loads of stories in here. Some of the ones you can tell us, and obviously those are the ones you can tell in the book. Ones you can't tell will never be told again. But it's wonderful stuff. Thanks so much for spending my time to come to see me this afternoon. It's a dreadful afternoon. And the book is Andy Buchanan. It's the buck props here. I must get that right. The buck props here. It's printed by Alolfa, and it's available, of course, in lots of bookshops, including my old mate down there, Tim, in Cover to Cover. There we go. Thanks so much for your company this afternoon.